The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey. With the mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shayn, and today for you guys, I have somebody who actually contacted me wanting to come on and be able to share his experiences and what actually pushed him down the path that he is currently on. This story is a very in-depth story. It's a very traumatic story. There are some spots where it gets very emotional, very heavy. So just a quick warning for you guys, but honestly, at the end of the day, this story needed to get out in order to bring more light to people who are going through these types of experiences. But before we get into this one today, I have some very, very exciting news to announce. I have finally set up an OMM Encounter Reports hotline, and that phone number is 313-364-1551. And for that, I want to use some of your guys' encounter/experience reports in upcoming shows, one of which is the Reality Report. For anybody that's been watching on social media, that is the new show that I announced for Patreon and is going to have some normal episodes dropped onto the normal feed also. But I want to build up not just bizarre stories that I found on the internet, but also some of the stuff from you guys. So, of course, don't forget to report those encounter reports to ommencounterreports@outlook.com, or you guys can always just call in, leave a voicemail at this number. You guys can even text it if you want to, whatever's easiest for you, and let me know what you guys want to do with the experience, because like I said, I would love to use some of these on upcoming shows. But if you're somebody that just wants to have somebody to talk to about these experiences and possibly even have me come out and investigate it, if you're within an area that I can come to and you guys don't want to end the episodes, just let me know beforehand. But of course, I'm going to connect with you guys and make sure it's okay even after you guys report these before they get featured on the show. But I am very excited to announce that, and down in the show description you'll also find that number if you didn't catch it. And if you know anybody else that might want to share some experiences, don't forget to pass it along to a friend. Just a quick piece of news. The next event that I will be at will be Snarly Yow's Cryptid Halloween 3. That'll be happening in West Virginia on October 26th. More information on that is available down in the show description. But before we get into the show, just a quick message. This podcast has a strong focus on community engagement, so I encourage all listeners to share their own experiences and research on the show. That said, if you guys have an encounter or experience you guys would like to share on the show or have me investigate, you guys can email me at ommencounterreports@outlook.com. And if you'd like to be a guest on the show, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com. Every single thing that I mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, Wesley Coons and Andrea. How's it going today?
Hey, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolute pleasure to have you guys on the show. We originally had gotten in touch through Bizarre Encounters, actually. You ended up shooting me a message to my Bizarre Encounters account. And I always like to just have these one-on-ones with people. Maybe at some point we'll probably end up out in Bizarre Encounters. But I always like doing these kind of background, touch base. People kind of get to know them a little bit. So I guess it's a good spot to start for both of you guys, because I'm not too familiar with your guys' work yet. Why don't you let everybody know a little bit about your guys' background and a little bit about what you guys do?
Andrea, why don't you go first?
Well, I am Andrea Rice. I am the founder of How Good It Can Get. It's something that is near and dear to my heart. I was on a journey after personal setbacks, and I found these tools that helped me along the way. And while everyone's journey is unique, I feel like the tools that you need to get you to the best life you can have are universal. So that's how Good It Can Get was born. And I've known Wes for several years. And so we've worked together on various projects, including the podcast, Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Andrea pushed me to do the podcast, and, she's also pushed me we wrote some children's books, and What Color's Your Dragon is the first one. Then Sydney's New Bike is the second one. Those are about how life happens for you, not to you. Teaches our children how to basically learn how to love themselves. And then she wanted me to do this podcast, and the podcast is Enlightenment Unknown, Life of a Spiritual Nomad. And what it is my real experience of going through a haunted house lasted about 9 months. And during that time, things were crawling on me. I had actually ended up having 3 exorcisms before I got fixed. Native American woman brought me to the mountains. We did a Native American rebirthing ceremony, and it's a lot. It's a lot.
I mean, we got time. I'd love to get into your story and your background if you'd like to get into it.
Yeah, you talk about it wherever you want.
So at least the experiences, and I'd like to kind of build it up to how I got into the podcast and everything, but where did it all kind of start for you? Like, you mentioned that there was a couple exorcisms and stuff, but what kind of built up to that? What was your experience that was happening?
Well, yeah, I bought this house, and, typical me, I'm going to buy a house with a swimming pool so I don't have to put a swimming pool in, and I ended up moving the swimming pool, right? So we believe what had happened is when we moved the swimming pool, it opened up something in the ground. So the house the house started to be more and more bizarre. I was living with somebody at the time. She moved out. And about that time, you could hear music in the walls. I would see a lot of things in the backyard. I remember looking out the window and seeing stuff in the backyard. And when I turned the flashlight on, nothing's there. And
just like dark shadows, like the shadow people, like apparitions.
You'd see eyes looking at you. You'd see shadows. You would look down and you'd swear there's something in those bushes right there that's pretty big. And when you turn on the flashlight, it's not there. And that lasted a while. Then one evening, I went out the back door, and I don't know when I left the back door open if that allowed something to come in. But as I came back in, I heard a door slam upstairs, and I remember thinking to myself, I made a mistake. There something happened at that point. And, really from at that level, I stopped seeing the things outside and I started seeing them inside. You're sitting there and you see stuff moving, you look and there's nothing there, or I close the bedroom door and you see people walking past, you got light coming underneath the door, so you'd see something go by. But the problem is the security camera on the other side didn't show anything.
Were you a believer before all this kind of stuff and the paranormal and everything, or was it this experience that kind of put you over the edge on it?
I thought there's ghosts. That was about it. I didn't have a belief in God. I didn't believe any of that. There's just some experiences as a child. I didn't believe that. And, sometimes I go somewhere and I feel like there might be a ghost there, but that was about the extent of it. I felt that was real, but I never experienced it.
And then where'd it kind of go for you after that then?
Well, I guess, Andrew, the next part would be, she's helped me put the show together and remember things.
I mean, it's hard to say where it would go because I think from what Wes has told you so far, like it doesn't even like touch what he was experiencing at that time. I wasn't involved, in the things that were going on with Wes at that time. But I mean, Wes, like it was like the things coming through the walls. I mean, to me, that was like the craziest thing. Or maybe, do you recall, like, when we talked about the voices that we have on recordings, like those to me are the most frightening.
Yeah, we do have that. I guess really the next part with that is, one night is, I don't know, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I was upstairs eating an ice cream sandwich. My two dogs, I had a German Shepherd and a Yorkie, and we heard the three of us heard a lion's roar downstairs in the living room. I mean, this god awful. A human couldn't scream as loud as this, and it was this unearthly lion's roar. And I remember looking at the dogs. I'm like, go be dogs, go be dogs. And they just sat there. They didn't move. So I grabbed my weapon. I went downstairs with my 45, and it's a big house. And so when you went downstairs, if you looked across the room, you could see the reflection in the glass. So I'm looking for a person. I didn't see anything. So as I came around the corner with my weapon drawn, it was like somebody had 50 pounds of chalk and threw it up in the air, but instead of coming to the ground, it created this outline of this demon. So you see the horns, the eyes, the face, you can see the expression on the face. So we later believe that what happened is that's when a portal opened in the house. So it says somewhere in the Bible something along the lines of, the devil will announce himself with the sound of a lion's roar. Well, I heard that lion's roar, and that's one of our episodes, isn't it, Andrea?
Yeah, lion's roar. Mm-hmm.
And it was running at me, and I just I backed up. I was pretty scared, and it ran upstairs. The Yorkie Sugar, she seen it and she barked. The German Shepherd, the killer, she didn't do nothing. But I went upstairs and I was looking around for it and I couldn't find it. But that's the point when the house really started getting crazy. So I don't know, about a week later, I was in bed eating an ice cream sandwich, and
as one does.
That's what people do tonight. You got your dogs, and you're finally single, and there's no craziness going on. You're eating an ice cream sandwich, watching MASH or something.
It's a good way to relax the end of the night.
Yeah. I later found out I could lose 25 pounds by eating ice cream sandwiches because the stress was so bad. That's all I ate. So I don't know. In the dining room, we had these Edison light bulbs. The Edison light bulbs only are 40 watts, right? So at best, we could have dinner there. You would see your food, but it's not going to be really bright. Well, the ghosts were making those lights brighter than the headlight on a car. And I went downstairs, and I remember, I'm not going to use the words that I use. I said, this is an effing house of God. And I turned the light switch off, right? And at that moment, I knew I had made a mistake. I had made something angry. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Take your time.
Yeah, that whole experience, that whole 9 months is, the show is pretty raw. So, going through all these experiences kind of messed with me a little bit, but I knew something was wrong. There was this anger in the house, right? This furious anger that showed up. And I was like, oh man, I think I screwed up. So I went upstairs, and the master bedroom had two double doors. They're 3-foot doors. So it's a 6-foot wide door. And the house had been bizarre. And so I had been taking this rope and tying the door shut, right? So I went up in the bedroom and I tied that shut. And at this time, I just had the German Shepherd. The Yorkie was my ex-girlfriend's dog, and Sugar went to live with her mom. And, I'm looking at the security cameras, and just, basically what ended up happening is the entire upstairs filled with this white fog. And, I didn't know what it was, but you could hear people actively walking up and down the stairs. You could hear, it almost sounded like a 1920s party outside the doors. It was kind of interesting unless you're there. But, there was something walking down the hallway that had to weigh 600 or 700 pounds. because every time it took a step, the entire upstairs would shake. And this is a 4,800 square foot house, so for the whole upstairs to shake, it's a big place. And as it was coming down the hall, you could tell it stopped and turned and faced the door. And the interesting part was when you're looking at the security camera, there's nothing but like some hazy fog on the other side of the door. But inside the bedroom, that whole outline of the door was blacked out, like something was standing there, but it was big enough to block out that side door. And I was texting some friends and talking to them. And, people like, call the police. I'm like, okay, hey, 911, how do you make that phone call? So I sat there for a second and I said something. I'm a former Marine. I said, F this, I'm just going to take care of it myself. And as I did that and I grabbed my weapon, it kicked the door. And had the door not been tied shut, it would have blown it open. So I got to be honest, I sat down for a minute. And I remember saying, I was like, I'm going to wait a few minutes before I beat your ass, I was panicked. I was shaking. I was terrified. So, I don't know, that went on probably about 20 minutes at that point. And then I convinced myself, you know what? It's a fire. I don't smell it, but it's got to be a fire. There's electrical fire. Where would fog's not going to be real. And so I opened the door and I stepped outside in the hall, and I made a mistake when I opened that door. So the second you stepped inside of the door, outside of the door, it was like negative 15 degrees. Instantly shivering. And I remember looking around, and there was this one point outside of the door. There was this balcony over there, and I had built a closet there for the person I was living with. It was a lady's closet. And the guy that built the house, I ended up meeting his daughters later, and they would say that he would sit on that balcony all the time and be really bizarre. I think he died in the house, but they wouldn't say, and I didn't want to push it. But when I looked over there, there was like this black swirling vortex or whatever, and outside of that got lighter and lighter and lighter. So I closed the bedroom door, and when I opened it and did that, I let something into the bedroom. So previous to that, we've been feeling my mom in the house a lot. It was weird because I felt her there all the time, and she'd been gone a few years. And as I'm standing there is like, I don't have long hair, but my hair was like blowing. Something was like screaming at me, and it's just shivering. I'm shivering. I don't get cold. I go skiing in shorts. I don't get cold. And I remember I was like, get the F off me. And I stepped back, and it stepped back into me again. And it was just like it was screaming. And I remember I started to panic. And, I'd asked my mom. I told her, I said, Mama, I know you're there, and I need your help. I said, you've got to help me. And the second basically I said that thing was shoved out of the bedroom. It was gone.
We will be right back after this brief commercial break. But just a quick reminder, if you guys want to stay up to date on the show, you guys can always go and follow Inquiries of Our Reality and Open Minds Media on Instagram, Facebook, Discord, YouTube, and TikTok. Now feel free to fast forward through these commercials so we can hop right back into the show. And we are back, so let's get back to it.
So I went over and sat on the bed, and my mom would always come up when you were sad or something, and she'd rub your arm and give you a kiss on the top, like at your temple. And I felt this cold on my arm, and I jumped back for a second, but it was right there, and then I could feel it right here, so I knew that was her giving me a kiss. So, I don't know. I guess I sat there for a couple minutes texting some friends. I'm like, dude, I'm one of those guys where it says, don't press the button, you're going to press the button. And, I felt like I'd pressed the wrong button. And finally, I made the decision. I said, I've got to do something. And I thought about that light downstairs. So I made the decision to go down to that light. And I remember telling my dog goodbye. I didn't know what was going to happen. Sorry. But, and she's all I had, So, I went out there and I wasn't going to bring her. So I went downstairs and dude, I've never been so scared in my life because you couldn't see 2 foot in front of you. I didn't know what was going to be in that. And I hauled ass downstairs and I ran into the kitchen. The funniest thing is when the house gets really, really bad, the lights turn blue in there. I could never figure that out. There's no blue lights in there, but I may have a picture of it. Do we have a picture of that, Andrea?
I don't remember the blue lights, but we do have pictures of some of the stuff.
Yeah, and the lights were blue, and I reached in, and I turned the light on, and instantly the light was so bright you couldn't see it. And so I ran back upstairs, and within probably 6 or 7 minutes, all the fog and stuff was gone. So I'm like, this is my chance. I grabbed the dog, my 45, 3 ice cream sandwiches, the keys to the RV, and I hauled ass. And, I started to basically live in that RV off and on for a few weeks. Then I lived in it for almost 8 months after that. So that was when it started getting crazy. So that was one day of 9 months of that level of stuff.
Wow. Say, if you said that's just when it started getting crazy, like I thought this was already like at the peak of what was happening here.
Oh, no, that was nothing. That was nothing. Nothing.
And, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so also too, to kind of bring Andrea into the conversation too, I assume that at some point you kind of came in and started helping him with some of this stuff, but one, what was kind of like your background with this type of stuff? And two, I don't want to jump forward into the story yet, but at what point do you kind of start coming in and helping him with these experiences?
I was not in Wes's world when he was going through this. So everything, I've known Wes for a long time, but I didn't really know him up until a couple of years ago. So I really just came into the fold when, I don't know, I believe everything is synchronicities. I started doing podcasts 5 years ago, but I was led to do them 7 years ago, and I had to really fight to do them at my work. And I believe that was all in preparation to bring Wes's story forward. So I didn't know him during this time, but I can tell you when I am there when he retells a story on Enlightenment, Unknown Life of a Spiritual Nomad. And even though it's been, I don't know what, Wes, like 5 years, like this is still very raw for him. This is still, I mean, you can only imagine like how frightening that would be. And what he has just mentioned to you, that really is like the appetizer. You haven't gotten to the main course yet. Yeah. Like there is so much to this story. And so when you see his emotion, I mean, it gets to me, and I wasn't even there. So yeah, I didn't come in until much later when it was time to bring the story forward.
Yeah, Andrea helps me stay grounded. She helps me stay focused. She helps me put the show together. And if it wasn't for her, the story wouldn't be told. And, I didn't want to tell the story. I thought I was going to write a book about it, and I just couldn't get it on the paper. And I remember when she came over, I mean, I've really struggled putting this out. And I think we're recording, I think, the 3rd episode. And she's like, hey, how's it going? How are you feeling? And I said, well, besides the fact I was on my hands and knees in the shower, screaming at the top of my lungs, just in pain and crying, because I had forgotten how painful it was. So, she wasn't there for that, but she's here for this, to guide me through it, to protect me, and to make sure, we stay focused and on track. And, for you guys, it's entertainment. For me, it's a real story, and it's helping me go through this and process and heal it. And, there's a lot of times where, I just don't, I'll get so caught up in it. I won't remember what I said 2 minutes ago. So she helps me, stay focused and do that. And I appreciate that. So if it wasn't for Andrea, we wouldn't be here.
See, I wouldn't even say necessarily for entertainment too, but people like you coming forward and sharing your experiences with this type of stuff makes it so that more people who have been dealing with this kind of stuff and have nobody to go to about this stuff, it opens up the door for them to actually get help with their experiences. So I know a lot of people out there, again, just see this stuff as entertainment, but at the end of the day, at least for me, it's the reason I'm doing this type of stuff is to be able to help people and be able to connect people with other people that can actually help them get to where they need to be in order to get past these experiences, or, if they're still experiencing them, help get over what's happening to them as it's happening, or the trauma of what's left from something happening in the past.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Andrea and I, when we were putting the show together, we didn't want it to be just a horror show, but there is it's pretty freaking entertaining. I mean, I don't want to do it again, but it's fun to listen to. But we also wanted to have where, life happens for you and not to you. And so there's lessons in all this stuff, and there's opportunities, and I call it beauty in the pain. And so we try to bring that into the show. And as the show ends, as far as finishing that aspect of the haunted house and stuff, that's where the show is going to go on. At that point is how, we can become the person you're supposed to be. And Andrea is very good at that. And so she's helping me at that as well.
And Shayn, I just love that you said that, because before really getting involved with Wes in this story, I really didn't understand the whole realm of what was out there, and it's easy to dismiss. But I'm glad you said what you said, because there are people that are struggling with these things right now, and you can see how it's affected Wes, even years later. So I think it's wonderful to bring awareness to this. And yes, there are people out there who have been through it. There are people out there that have survived it. And there are people out there that can help you. And Wes has wonderful stories, Wes, about all of the people that helped you along the way.
Yeah. I had people that show up. The funny thing is, shortly after that, of course, pretty much right away, I'm trying to find somebody to help me. And Ghostbusters.com is not a valid website. Nobody's going to show up to help you there. And
we should make it one if it's not. I mean,
I know, right? I know. One of the things I do now is I clear houses of that stuff. Matter of fact, tonight, the people next door, the little girl, I think she's 12, about 2 years ago, her mom called me, and the bed was slamming against the wall by itself. There was nothing in there. Well, there's something in there, but not a human. And so she asked me to clear that, and I fixed it real quick. And she texted me tonight, Andrea. She said, "Hey, my daughter's home by herself. Something's in the house." So I cleared it real quick, and I can do those things pretty quickly. I mean, I don't even have to go there to do it these days. But, something like that easily would have stayed with her, could have stayed with her the rest of her life, and changed the direction of her whole existence on this planet.
I mean, just in general, having these experiences, I mean, when you have them, of course, nobody wants to have a horrifying, traumatic experience. But at the end of the day, I mean, all of us as a community, I feel like all of us have had some of these type of bizarre experiences that we can't quite explain. And if it wasn't for us having these experiences, we wouldn't be here now doing this kind of stuff and bringing light to the experiences and actually trying to investigate it. So I think that it's all intended to happen for a reason. It pushes you down the path that you're supposed to be on, whether it's opening the door for other people to be aware of this type of stuff, or being somebody like you that actually goes out and actually tries to, remove these type of things from people. I mean, I go out and investigate and stuff, but at the end of the day, that's a little bit different than actually going and helping get rid of a demonic possession on somebody. So again, if we didn't have everybody in this community, if they didn't have the experience they have, they wouldn't be where they are in the community right now, helping people out and furthering the community in research.
Sure. It's definitely interesting. I would watch these shows and stuff, and I'm like, that seems bizarre. That seems weird. And, like the story I just shared, that was that depth, that level of insanity and sheer terror was 9 months. It wasn't too long after that. I don't understand it, but it was like I had roaches crawling all over me 24/7. And that lasted, actually, after it, that even I had side effects of that even after the haunted house was fixed. So, as we're going through that, stuff's crawling on me. I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, and all these gifts are turning on. I could go up to objects and touch them, and I could taste the fruit that was in the bowl. I could see things that happened in the past. I could hear things. I could see. I could just really any gift that you could think of. I ended up having almost immediately, and it was turned on 100%. So, and it was very painful. I would be able to know what people are thinking. I could go through an intersection and I could see where somebody had died on that street. Just all kinds of bizarre things. So I didn't understand that, and at the same time, this was going on. So one of the things that was quite painful. It was all kind of painful. But if I shook your hand and you had something in or on you, I could see it like crawling through my veins and stuff, and I feel it crawling into my body, and is extraordinarily painful. So
you're talking about if somebody had like an attachment on them of like some other type of entity or being?
Yeah. Yep. Yep. If they had something like that, it would, I see that stuff all the time, and even today. But if they would touch me, it'd be like some creepy horror movie where I'd see it. It was like snakes and stuff going through your skin, crawling up inside me. And it was nerve-wracking for sure. I wouldn't recommend it, man.
This is going to sound like kind of a strange question, but if you could see this, could you see it on other people? Meaning that like, if you saw two other people shaking hands, would you see this thing transfer from one person to the other? Like transferring attachments could be that simple and easy? Or do you think it was just a matter of they're coming onto you because they're like aware of the fact that you had abilities and were aware of them and could see them?
Both. So I seen a video on TikTok or Facebook or something a number of years ago, and it was a video of two people walking through a parking lot. So it was like the camera was a security camera or something, and you can see the one person walking. All of a sudden, you see this entity, this human-looking shape, peel off of them and run over and jump on the other person. The other person kind of jumps like this, and all these people are saying how fake it is. I said, that's not fake, that's real. That's how that works. You can go to the grocery store, you can go to the corner grocery store or whatever, and something is there that likes you, and it'll follow you, it'll connect with you. I see it all the time.
They say negative energy latches onto people. If somebody comes in and they bring their negativity into like a room, it starts to spread to everybody. And I don't think people realize that on a spiritual level, that's a lot more literal than what people actually think.
Yeah. Well, Andrea's seen it 100 times where somebody will text me that we know, and their son or daughter is acting, just being ruthless. And so they'll ask me, say, can you clear my child? And I can do it pretty quick these days, probably in 3 to 5 seconds, maybe 10 if I take my time. And so I can see what's there. I just basically I grab it and I just peel it off like that. And I can feel it break off the person. And I just say it to the foot of Jesus, and it goes away. And 99.9% of the time, within 6 to 10 minutes, that person texts me back, say, oh my gosh, they're acting so much different now. And the person I worked on didn't know I did anything. So it's not like, I'm like, hey, Shayn, I'm going to work on you. Let me know how you feel. I'm like, oh gosh, I feel better. It's not that placebo effect, right? I mean, right, Andrea? You see it all the time.
No, I've witnessed that firsthand with Wes doing that work. And it is a very rapid, as soon as he does that, it's like an instant change in the person. I've been in the same room with the person he's done it with and seen it, and that person didn't know it was happening. And so these entities, these attachments, they're very real. And one thing that has kind of shocked me, or I've become aware of since, knowing Wes and all of these like things that he's gone through, is that what if you go through life not even knowing that there are these dark energies, these attachments, right? You don't even know why maybe you're acting off, or this person is acting off. they're not acting right, like they normally would, and how it can really destroy lives, right? Just a simple clearing could take care of it, but if it's not taken care of, it can really destroy lives.
Yeah, I don't go to bars too often, but I went to a bar a couple years ago with a friend, Shayn, and as we're sitting there, on the other side of the room, there's this big wall above the bar itself, and it's painted black. And as I looked up there, you see all these demons sitting there, right? And I told my friend Sharon, I said, "Hey, watch this." So I cleared all the dark energies out of the bar. Instantly, the lights got about 20% brighter, because when you take them out, if there's a lot there, it will brighten the room, because that darkness sucks it out. And no exaggeration, within about a minute, most of the people there weren't smiling. People started smiling. People started dancing. It shifted everything in that bar. It was pretty cool. And I don't know. I enjoy doing that work, because to me, it's payback. They tormented me so much. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get y'all every chance I get. So
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. But before we get into this commercial break, if anybody is interested in supporting the show or any of the work I do over here, you guys can go and check out the OMM Patreon. Over there is 7-day free trials available for all of the tiers, and it is constantly updating with new shows and different stuff going on. You guys can also go and check out the OMM merch store, constantly getting updated with new designs, not just pertaining to the podcast themselves, but also cryptid, paranormal, and extraterrestrial related designs. And the third way you guys can support the show, if you guys think I deserve it, is that you guys can leave a 5-star review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify. And if you guys leave a 5-star review, of course, I will read on the show and give you guys a big shout out. Now let's get to the commercial break so we can hop back in the show. And we are back. So let's hop right in. That's one of those cool things, too, where it's almost like you're saving something from the future, because it's like, if you clear the room in a bar, you could have saved somebody from getting into a fist fight or something in the back alley, or somebody getting stabbed in the back alley because of some altercation, especially if these demonic entities are involved. I mean, how people get when they drink. Like, it doesn't take too much for somebody to get to the point where they're pulling weapons on each other.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't do that, let's say it sees Susie over there, and for whatever reason, there's something about her or whatever, and it connects and follows her home. What happens instantly is the person starts to be a little different, right? Maybe the shoulder is a weak spot, but when it's following or attaching to her, all of a sudden, man, she feels like she needs shoulder surgery. So it starts to magnify your pain. So as you are miserable and uncomfortable, it feeds off that. Then all of a sudden you're going to start noticing, you might not notice it, but people around you be like, man, God, she sure seems angry lately. There's this underlying anger there. And it starts to go and go and go. And it starts following you, attaches to you. And those are the first steps to embodiment. And once it gets inside, that's another story.
I'm glad that you brought up the thing where they start putting weight into a specific spot, because that's actually, I've had a few people that have verified that. One of the people I had on, I believe it was the Demon Seer was one of them, and then there was another person I had on, but they brought up the whole fact that being able to see these things, they would see that they would weigh down on a specific part of a person, and they mentioned that it would start with a shoulder pain or a neck pain, and that would be the spot where they would attach and put their weight on. So I'm glad that I've had now 3 people that have verified that.
Yeah. So for me, Shayn, when if you fast forward through the haunted house, we could talk a lot about that, but one of the things, when it was over, all the people were gone. And one of the things that happened is these beautiful people started showing up to help me, these healers, these Reiki trained healers. And, these some of the most powerful women on the planet, I believe, who have never not been able to fix anything. They're like, dude, we can't scratch the surface of this property and of you. And, they didn't charge me a penny. They worked with me almost a year, didn't charge me a penny. And, when it was all over and everybody was gone, the house was fixed, the medicine woman had fixed me. I had to go do a rebirthing ceremony where I had to dig my own grave, and I laid in my grave for 18 hours and I energetically died. And when that happened, the demon that was in me left finally and went down and went away. And I had 2 exorcisms with a priest and a minister prior to that. And I can promise you what you see on TV minus the head spinning around, that shit's real. You know, it's quite painful.
Especially that like brute force where people just get tremendously strong. They're able to like bend into like weird different patterns and stuff. I've had a couple different people have mentioned actually experiencing and seeing stuff like that. And kind of bouncing a little bit back a little bit. The last part that you were kind of talking about was the fact that you had left in the RV. Just out of curiosity, like what got you to come back into the house where, you know, you just actually started like flushing everything out instead of just staying in the RV? And also, whatever you're okay with sharing, like what were some of the other like kind of build up points to the point where you decided that you actually wanted to get help and actually get somebody to come into this house and start trying to push this stuff out?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I started looking for help immediately. You know, I wanted my life back, and so you know, I stayed in the RV for a couple of days, went back and forth in the house, thinking it's going to go away or whatever. It didn't. I asked my secretary to come and do a blessing on the house. And so for me to ask anything related to God, anything with the church to come was a pretty big stretch. You know, some things happened to me as a child. And in my mind, you know, if somebody was allowed to do, if somebody did that to me as a child, how is there a God, right? You know, how can that be there because they let that happen? And later on, I had connected with this priest, and what he did, I'm not going to go through the whole part of it, but he had me go back to a specific day where I was going to be assaulted. And he told me to look around the room for Jesus. And I can promise you that was a stretch for me to do. And I remember actually, I'm not going to use the language I used. I said, you know, you got to be effing kidding me, right? And I remember looking over on the wall and there was a picture of Jesus there. He says, no, son. He says, I want you to look for him. And I remember cussing. I was in so much pain. Things were crawling on me. They literally could rip my skin. I had claw marks on my body. You could lift my shirt and you could see faces, imprints coming out of my skin. But when I looked back over here, I seen Jesus. And I remember I just started to cry. And he said, I told the priest, I said, yeah, I see him. And he said, what did he say, son? And I said, Father, he doesn't have to say anything. I said, because he was crying, right? And so, Shayn, for me, that was the moment that I realized he wasn't there to pull me out of the room. You know, I can't go with you everywhere on the planet 24 hours a day and protect you. Something could happen to you, but I could love you through it. So I realized Jesus wasn't there to pull me out of the room from being assaulted. He was there to love me through this experience. And so I believe God showed me the demons because I'm looking at the demons. I'm like, well, if those things are real, then I'm going to start to question, is that real? And so, you know, it's interesting how this whole process goes through of seeing the demons, coming to the realization that Jesus is real, and then, you know, going down that road a little bit. So I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person, and and Jesus flows through me at a high level. But to answer your question is, you know, I was back and forth. I was looking for people right away, and, you know, I wanted to fix my shit. You know, I wanted to go back to my miserable ass broken life, and, you know, I had couple Maseratis and a big house, and you know, that's all I knew. I worked hard and I had a real estate company. I wanted to go back to that. But the funny thing is I had everything, but I had nothing because I was so broken. And so I started looking for people to help me. And I went on this private Facebook page about ghosts or something. And once they approved me, I went on there. I said, hey, look, this is real. This is what's going on. I don't want anybody to reach out just to ask questions or take pictures. I want somebody to fix it. And like 30 minutes later, a lady named Linda reached out from 2.5 hours up the street. I'm in Virginia Beach. She's in the Eastern Shore. And she said, I can help you. So she started coming with Kathleen, her girlfriend, on her one day off, 2 hours each way, $30 bridge fee plus gas, to work with me 5 and 6 hours at a time trying to fix the house. But the ironic thing is every time we did something on the house and nobody could explain this to me, it made the house more powerful. So every blessing made it more powerful. Every healing made it more powerful. Everything we did made it more powerful. So, and we had hundreds of hours of these women that clear this stuff, that do this work, coming and dedicating their time and not charging me anything, trying to fix this. And I guess one day, I don't know, it was probably 4 or 5 months into it, Andrea, the lady from Madagascar.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm spending all day long calling people. So I'm like, hey, Shayn, this might sound crazy, but, I'm in Virginia Beach and I got a super haunted house, blah, blah, blah. And, that's what I did. So I talked to this lady that was in New York who is from Madagascar, and she said, I can fix it. But I just started a new job, and I told her, I said, I'll pay you I'll buy your tickets. And I'll give you $10,000 cash. Just come for the day, 10 grand, come fix it. Wouldn't come fix it. And she says, look, you're too stupid to understand, so I'm not going to explain it to you. So I wish you would have, right? But she said she knew, Shayn, that we were, every time we did a healing, because I didn't tell her this, she said, every time you do a healing, you're going to make it more powerful. And
is it that matter of almost like you hear people talk about with exorcisms, that it's a matter of you have to wear these things down. So it's like with every thing you throw at it, it's going to try to give its full force back at you, but it's a matter of persistence where you have to break it down after a certain point.
Well, it was giving it more power. No, it wasn't breaking it down. It was making it more power. So it's like taking that a 4-cylinder and making it an 8-cylinder, then a 16-cylinder, then a 32-cylinder. And, it would get better for like a day or so. Then it would come back even harder and more powerful. And, we had security cameras throughout the house, and you could look at the security cameras. I mean, you could see this behind me, and you would see, for example, if there was a door there, the energy, the portals in that house were so powerful, you couldn't see the door, you couldn't see the picture. Then 6 inches over, you could see everything perfectly clear, like you can here. And that was all over the house. So what was happening is there was these portals that were bringing in souls, but they couldn't go anywhere, and the demons were like feeding off of them, as best I could come up with. And it was weird. It was weird.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
Should I tell them about when we helped the slaves go home?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. Yeah.
So this is, Shayn, this probably started February, March. So this instance was just before 4th of July weekend. And long story short, I'm hanging out at the house, living in the camper. So at that point, long as I didn't go in the house, I was pretty good. Even though things were crawling on me, I was pretty safe. So I could even go in the garage and I was fine. But when I would go in the house, literally I crossed the threshold. All I wanted to do was grab my weapon, use it on myself, and do cocaine. I'm just like, that's what it wanted me to do. I would leave the house, cross the threshold, and that would go away. And that type of drug use was not normal for me. And so it was just so abnormal, the behavior. And there was instances where I would go in the house. I remember one day my secretary called me like 4 or 5 times. She's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm looking for the thing. I'm looking for the thing. She's like, what are you looking for? And what would happen is I was in the house, and every time I would go to leave, I would find myself back upstairs for hours. And the thing I was looking for, I kept picking up my revolver, or my 45. So they wanted me to kill myself because they couldn't kill me, but they manipulated me to go back to that. And when she called, it kind of broke the cycle, and I was able to get out of the house. So, for the most part, outside of the house was good. So that day, Sandra Grace Brooks shows up. She was the first healer I ever met. She passed away 2 years ago from cancer. Incredibly powerful healer. And then Linda and Kathleen were there, and nobody planned anything. They're like, oh, look at this. And so Sandra Grace, she's a trip. She comes, she's like, hey, I called this psychic, and you figure all this is new for me. I'm like, all right. So we called a psychic. Okay, I'll play. And So we get this guy on the phone, and he said he feels that there was these slave ships came over, and these poor souls died on the ship, and they threw their bodies in this makeshift grave where my swimming pool is. When we moved the swimming pool, we disrupted the grave. And he said, hey, you guys have to get them to trust you and go to the light, right? And I'm like, Shayn, that's all we got to do, bros. We got to get
Easy.
these freaking slaves.
Give them an ice cream sandwich. Like,
Yeah, to trust these pasty white people.
Yeah, you got to do it ET style, you know? Instead of Reese's Pieces, use your ice cream sandwich pieces.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, yeah, that's great. That's great. And so I'm a bit of a smart mouth. And I said, so how are we going to do that? And Sandra Grace says, we have you. You're the ace in the hole. And I'm like, of course I am. Of course I'm the ace in the hole. I said, how's that? And I never told her these things, but she said, do you know when you're stressed how your shoulder hurts and your kneecaps hurt? I'm like, yeah. She said, in a past life, you were dragged behind a horse by your right arm. It dislocated your shoulder and ripped your kneecaps off. She said, do you know how when you close your eyes, you see these bleached out skeletons? I never told her that. I said, yeah. She said, that was the last thing that you seen. Your brother and yourself were a part of the Underground Railroad helping these families to freedom. You got caught and they murdered you. That's why you're the ace in the hole. I'm like, of course, Shayn. What else would it be? So we go down to the backyard. The backyard's got a dock and this little fingerling of water. And the water back there was always really gross, right? It kind of bubbled and it was nasty. My next door neighbor, I'm a retired Marine. He's a retired Marine colonel. And he's this little short, stocky, mean guy. And he was always mean. And he was always drunk. He made his own beer. And so, we're down there, we're going to do this sacred ceremony, which was embarrassing. And as we're standing there, each of us took a direction. I was north. Sandra Grace was east. Then Linda was south. Kathleen was west, and I was north. And that's what it was. And so we're going to hold hands. And Sandra Grace had this little pot, and she lit something in it. I don't know what it was. And what that was going to do is represent this column of white light to bring these spirits through and send them to God, right? So as we're sitting there, I look over, and there's this guy walking down the backyard. I mean, Barney Fife all the way. Do, 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 stuff jingling everywhere. He's got the kayak, the life jacket, freaking whistles. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, it was comical. So he's sitting there doing all this stuff, putting in the kayak in the mud and pushing himself through the mud. And finally he gets up past this, and I'm mortified. I am so embarrassed. I'm like, I don't know what we're doing. This is just a lot for me. And the guy said something about, do you remember what I said he said?
I don't remember what he said.
He said something. He spoke to me. And Sandra Grace just looks over. She said, honey, the darkness is going to try to keep us from doing our work. And as I turned now from where we were to where he would be out to the open water, I mean, it would have probably taken him 2 minutes to paddle that. And this was a second and a half. He wasn't there. He was gone.
Like he was never there in the first place?
Yeah, he was 100% gone. The streak in the mud and the paddle marks were there, but he was gone. And I just remember how that freaked me out so bad. I'm like, and I looked at her and she just had this smile on her face. He wasn't real. He was there to disrupt us. So Sandra Grace goes and starts the ceremony, and she rings this little bell. If you hold the bell, it just makes that dull noise. Well, she kept doing that. Something was keeping its hand on there so it couldn't ring the bell. So when you ring the bell, you're calling in, I guess, all the fairies and the angels or stuff. I don't really understand that part. And so she shakes it off and she rings the bell, and somehow she opens this energy. I can do that work, but I don't remember what she did. And So she says something, everybody says something, then it gets to me, and they're like, Wes, you have to convince them. You have to convince them to go. And I just remember having my eyes closed, and so I'm telling these people, I'm like, what do I say? And you think about these families from Africa, they're hunter gatherers, these beautiful souls. The men are men, and the women are, they're just fierce fighters and hunters. And being a Marine, I told them, I said, hey, we're here to help you. And I heard them say, you're not like us. I said, I am. I said, look at my heart. I've got the heart of a warrior. You've got the heart of a warrior. You and I have the same color blood. We might not look alike, but we bleed red. And so as I'm talking about that, I could feel all these souls showing up, and I've never experienced that before. And I had a friend of mine that had taken his own life. And about a month prior to this, Linda and Kathleen had recorded them connecting with him and helping him go to heaven, go to the light. And, Scott was very tormented, and we were in the Marine Corps together, and he's a good friend of mine. So one of the things he liked to do when I would come see him in the Marine Corps, they had a cleanup rag in their bedroom from when they had happy time, and he'd always throw it in my face. Thank God it was never wet, right? I'm just like, we're Marines, man. We ain't right. So as we're doing this, for some reason, I remember just saying out loud, I'm not going to say his last name. I said, Scott, you have to come help us. And in my mind, I seen him coming down from heaven with his black curly hair and his big smile, his like a big head and his little wings, just jetting down. And as he comes down, he grabs their hand in front of my chest, throws the rag in my face. I'm like, seriously? And then takes off, right? And for, I think, almost 2 minutes, I was just shaking uncontrollably as every one of those came through my body and went to that what column of white light and went home. And I remember when that was happening, thinking that the dock was on fire because it was so hot. I was backing up. I'm like, man, we got this going on. The dock's on fire. And I opened my eyes and there was no fire lit. That column of white light that she brought in was so powerful, it was burning my skin. And all those souls went home. And there's some other bizarre things that happened after that, but we kind of finished that up, and we went back to the house, and Sandra Grace calls this guy back, right? And he says, oh, this is great. You're going to be the curator of the property. I'm like, what? I said, curator sounds permanent to me. He says, oh yeah, you're going to live here the rest of your life. I'm like, the F I am. I ain't doing that. And so we're arguing this point. And I said, dude, the dead people know I'm selling the house. We're fixing this shit and I'm leaving. And I said, there's got to be something we can do. And he goes, you know what? There is something we can do. You need to plant a white flowering tree to honor them and then put a memorial of stones or something on the property. And the funny thing is, 2 days before, my neighbor comes over out of the blue and says, hey, they got a sale on trees at the hardware store. Do you want a tree? And I went over there and looked at the tree he bought me, and it is a white flowering tree.
Synchronicities.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, deal. That's what we're going to do. So in like 15 minutes, I hauled ass, planted the tree, watered that thing, put fucking mulch on it, hauled ass in the house. Now, when I showered in the house at that time, I would put 2x4x10 in the door because there's a downstairs bathroom. So it would go into the bathroom and block that door from being closed and block the door out of the house from being closed. I was terrified to be in the house by myself. And so I'd shower real quick, grab the boards out and leave. So I think within 15 minutes, I planted that tree, told the ladies goodbye, took a shower, got in my car, and went to the beach. But that day was a mistake because that lady had said, don't do anymore. And this was a big ceremony. So that weekend I went to Outer Banks to see my family. I was supposed to be there 3 days, and I probably lasted maybe 10 hours. And I was looking on the security cameras, and I could see where they had it made it more powerful enough to leave the house and take over the property. Because you would look at the cameras, and all my trees would look like this, and would be shaking, and the neighbors' trees would be perfectly still. So I went home, and my dog was being watched by somebody, and I decided to stay in this hotel. And when I got in the hotel that night, I realized that they were powerful enough. They followed me at this point. They were in the hotel room. And so I went drinking, hanging out with my friends, and it was like 3:00 in the morning. I came back, and you ever had sleep paralysis?
More times than I can count.
Yeah. You know how you can stop that? Before you go to sleep, ask your angels, say, angels, wrap me and protect me with your golden light. I guarantee it stops it. And so I went to sleep, and I woke up in sleep paralysis. And for some reason, I thought the words Jesus Christ, which is not a normal. This is not, at that time of my life, is not a normal conversation piece. And instantly, Shayn, when I did, I just took in this deep breath of air, and when I did, something crawled down my throat into my chest. I remember feeling it, my going down my throat and stretching, like my ribs were popping, and you could see your skin moving, and it's feeling it pushing organs and stuff around. And it was so freaking painful. And that lasted like a minute and a half at doing that. And I just remember, I just broke down, and I just started bawling. I didn't know what to do. I'd already been several months in living with this, and now that, and I just hysterically cried, and I started begging God. I was like, "You've got to help me." And he didn't send in Archangel Michael. He didn't send in this angel team. They didn't send shit to fix it. But what they did do is, all of a sudden, I don't know what they are, these probably twice the size of a football, like tic-tac looking things, started to float down from the ceiling. Like, when you're out outside and the snow's coming down, it's quiet outside, it kind of absorbs the noise, and it felt like that. And these things started floating down all the way around me. And there ended up like being 30 or 40 of them. I don't know what they were, but I just remember I fell asleep. And so, he didn't send somebody to save me. He sent hope. I would have preferred to have him save me, but he sent that just to let me know that he's there, I believe. And it was months later before I got that out. Months later, before the exorcisms came. And those are like 3 big ass ordeals out of probably 27 big ass ordeals that happened. And then on the in between, every single day was being spiritually attacked by walking in a dead thing attached to you or whatever. And I had this lady Karen that she stopped charging me. She would just clear me entities off of me 2 and 3 times a day, and people would rotate out to do that just to keep me alive so I could go through this process trying to get fixed. All these people showed up to help me.
Inquiries of All Reality will be back after this brief commercial break, but just a quick reminder, don't forget to go and check out the awesome sponsors of the show: IKNOWSQUATCH, Cryptoteeology, Snarly Yell Natural Products, Oregon-ite, Dimension Devices, and Big Ape Threads. More information and discounts for those are all available down in the show description. Now feel free to fast forward through these commercials so we can hop right back into the show. And we are back, so let's get back to it. Was it the 3 exorcisms in the end that ended up clearing this house out finally?
The the church came to the house. They didn't fix it. When the church got there, something picked me up and threw me backwards into the ceiling, like at a 45-degree angle in front of the priests and the people. So the church didn't fix it. The 2 exorcisms by the church and the 2 churches didn't fix it. What fixed it was going to the mountain and going through this rebirthing ceremony where you dig your own grave and you lay in the ground until you energetically die and then you're reborn. And that removed the stuff out of me. And then 30 days later, she came to the house and fixed the house. She sang 3 songs. 3 songs. I'm like, you're shitting me. We've been doing all this time. There's no fire, there's no brimstone. You're singing 3 songs. And she fixed it.
Do you think it all started with the slaves being buried underneath the swimming pool, and that kind of just opened up this portal, and then from there it became a thing, or it wasn't necessarily just the matter of getting rid of those souls anymore, but the presence like attached itself to you. So it was a matter of doing this like step by step, where it's like you had to clear all the slave souls out, and then after that, then you were able to kind of do this step by step to clear everything else out, starting with yourself and then the rest of the house after. Like maybe clearing out the remnants of the slaves was the thing that actually like closed the portal in this area, but there was still like a presence that was existing there.
Andy, you what do you think, Andrew? Because I don't know. You know the story too. You didn't live it, but you know the story. I think the slaves were a part of the story.
Because assumably something with major trauma would be what would open the portal in the first place. Yeah. So like, assumably that would have been the start, but it may not have been the end necessarily.
Yeah. I think it was definitely part of it. This lady, Karen, she lives in Massachusetts or something, and she clears houses remotely from long distance, kind of like I do. But she ran across this lady, and she's telling the story, and she said, we can't fix this house. And I forget what it's called. What was the line in the ground, Andrew? Do you remember they found some line in the ground that they had to close? I want to say horror line, but it's not a horror line.
I don't remember the name of it.
I can figure it out, but basically this psychic lady told her to look for this specific, it's like an anomaly, however you say that, in the earth underneath the house, that basically when the pool was dug and or moved, it opened that up. And so basically it allowed, in essence, come from hell up and out into the property. So whatever that line is, because they actually was able to close that, and that made a big difference, but it didn't fix it. So, I think it's a combination of a bunch of different things.
That's what I'd assume too. It seems like there may have been a start point, but then there was just all of these other things that just started catching because of it already being this magnetic attraction. It's just more and more pieces building on and stacking on that makes it harder to find that root cause of what makes it so that you can get rid of this thing happening in the first place.
Yeah, because the guy that built the house, I went to high school with his daughters, and I think I put something on Facebook, and they had seen that, and they had reached out. I said something like, "You think ghosts aren't real?" And it was like the fog and stuff. And she came over and she said when they were there that the dad was hanging out in that one creepy loft area, and like the fireplace glass would shatter and the glass would go like 40 feet across the room and hit her. What glass goes 40 feet, and just all this weird stuff. But then this other family owned the house, and I don't think anything was going on with them. But then when I got there, things started happening because, the girl I was living with, one of the things that happened, schizophrenia turned on for her. And so she started becoming a different person. And, of course, there was arguments and fights. And every time there was an argument, the house just got darker and darker. It was really creepy. Kind
of funny you brought that up, actually. The episode right before this one actually had a psychotherapist come on who's been studying the phenomenon of schizophrenia. And his whole thing that he relates it to is that these are actually demonic forces that are actually talking through somebody. And they basically convince the person that they are them, and then from there they basically are able to take like full control over them. But basically, like side paralleling the whole concept of exorcism, that schizophrenia is actually linked to this, and he's actually had the opportunity to go to all these different prisons and actually dig into like the mind of some of these people who have been pushed to the edge, or they've actually committed murder because of their schizophrenia. And no matter what, when he seems to push them, they get really mad at Bible verses. They have all these specific taglines that they get mad at that makes it push right into like the demonic factor. So also kind of weird timing that you brought that up. And the episode previous to this was already kind of talking about that concept with it also being an attachment or demonic possession.
Well, one of the things that Lakota says is, you ever heard of somebody being, I think it's called astroglide, where they can leave their body and go to different places?
Oh yeah, astral projection. Actually, you don't know too much about my backstory, but like my whole backstory was that at a young age, I don't know exactly when it started, but I used to astral travel out of my body and go into these like weird places, and I'd see the room around me and see myself sleeping. And then when I'd come back to, I'd see shadow people and experience sleep paralysis. So yeah, I already kind of linked up on this one, but full background with astral experiences.
Yeah. Well, one of the things Lakota says is when somebody doesn't know what they're doing with that, they get lost. And so basically their soul doesn't come back. And that's where she says schizophrenia comes from, is their soul didn't come back into their body.
I've also heard like the whole like golden tie thing, or the silver string tie connection too, with like astral projection too, that it's like if you get too far away, there's also the ability that these things can come in and enter, or if they sever that silver cord, then they might be able to come in if they come in within a certain amount of time. But if they don't, then that body's dead. And if you die or disconnect in the astral world, then you disconnect from your actual physical self too.
Andrea is an alien, so you got to be careful with that.
Whatever, I am not.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. I mean, we've got, the podcast, we probably got 27 hours of just telling stories of everything I went through, and we're not even done yet. And it's, it's that intense, unfortunately, through the whole thing.
Just as far as like your podcast goes too, just because we're starting to kind of wrap up towards the end here too. Do you have ideas of like what you're going to get into as far as like, are you going to continue on the podcast after you're done being able to talk about your encounters or experiences? Or did you specifically do the podcast just to be able to get these experiences out? And once they're out, that's all you want to do with the podcast?
Well, the first part of that, I wanted to get out. Andrea, what are we going to do next?
The whole premise was we were going to start with the haunted house, and it's actually become, I think we're in season 2. We're probably going to have 3, maybe 4 seasons of the haunted house. But, Shayn, you talked earlier about synchronicities. And I think when you look at Wes's story, the synchronicities that brought him from being a Marine to surviving this haunted house, to being the healer that he is today. There's no way that this is not divinely led. Like, these synchronicities were leading him to be the healer he is today. And I think after the story is told about the haunted house and how Wes got to be where he is today, then we can really dive into, like Wes likes to say, life happens for you and not to you, and how we can, even though this is one man's personal story, there are so many relatable lessons in it for everyone about how to overcome trauma, how to pick yourself up and get the abundant life that we all are meant to have. And we can overcome anything. Wes has overcome so many horrendous, I don't even want to use the word horrendous, but this has been like a traumatic, experience that lasted quite a long time for Wes, and how he overcame that. And so there's lessons in that for everyone. And we want to just, spread joy and love and lessons to everyone and how they can live their best life.
Yeah. So, the first episode, Shayn talks about like the worst day. The worst is, I started at the worst, and that was like 8 months in or something. And, where I'm in my camper, things are crawling all over me. Demons are coming through the walls, through the TVs and stuff. You can see them. And, and my hand's on my pistol, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I pull the trigger? And I got my dog Kennedy right there. My German Shepherd Kennedy trying to protect me, and she would look at them, look at me, look at them, and finally I was like, "Look, they can't hurt you. Just go to sleep." And she goes, and sticks her head under the blanket, and goes to sleep. It's like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and that was when I realized they couldn't kill me. Because I remember the lady from Madagascar said they can only kill you if you're in the house. And so the story starts out with one day in Marine Corps boot camp 30 some years ago, when this drill instructor just does some really horrible shit to us. And I thought he was doing that to prepare me to go into combat and potentially be taken as a prisoner of war and tortured. But it was to prepare, God did that to prepare me 30 some years later to remember that day and survive. And that was the last day I picked my weapon up with the intention of hurting myself. And, I just didn't know how to pull the trigger. How do I do that and not go to hell? How do I do that and not destroy my family? And that gave me that piece of hope. I talk about hope as my second favorite 4-letter word. And, is that piece of hope. So, when somebody's sitting there and they're struggling and they're miserable and they're broken and they're sad, there's opportunity in that. There's hope. I tell people, I could walk through hell for you. I just can't do it for you. I can walk through hell with you. I can't do it for you. And I know the shortcut. And that's what we do. So after everything was done, I went and got Reiki certified, not to become a healer, but I didn't know what else to do and I was scared. And when I took my Reiki 1 certification, within 3 or 4 days, I was doing master level work and didn't understand it. And within a couple months, I could see inside of people's bodies, and I was doing long distance work. And, I was just saying to Grace said that, I asked her one day, I said, "Do you think I have gifts?" And she laughed. She said, "Honey, we're waiting to see what you're going to be." And I'm like, "Well, I don't understand." Because my whole life, I was told I was ugly, weak, and stupid. And I believed I was ugly, weak, and stupid. And, she said, I forget what I did. She said, "You remember when you did that one thing at my office?" I said, yeah. She said, "That takes most people 15 years to learn. And nobody taught you how to do it, and you did it because you've seen me do it." And so God gave me these extraordinary healing gifts. And so, my website's VB Healer, as in Virginia Beach Healer, vbhealer.com. I've got clients all over the world. I've worked on thousands of people. Andrea is helping me take that business global. We're going to start doing long distance group healing sessions. And, Jesus flows through me at a high level to heal people, and together we heal the world. It's cool.
We will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And we are back, so let's hop right in. I'm glad that this seems to be a common thing that I talk about on the show too, is that most people, when they have something bad happen to them, they always ask, like, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? But at the end of the day, I feel like there's not any growth without trauma. You have to go through something in order to actually have growth and actually be able to learn. And in turn, by going through these things, you can now, like you mentioned, help people through these experiences, where if you had never been through these experiences, those people would have never listened to you how to get through them in the first place. So, a lot of people, again, they'll wonder why these bad things are happening to them, but you're not looking at it from, the backed out perspective that, you may have these struggling times in life now, but there's a reason why you're struggling through those times. And in the end, you're going to come out stronger, or in turn, it's going to make it so you can help people out because you've been through them. So I'm glad you're one of those people. I'm glad that you were able to come out on top of having such a traumatic experience instead of letting it completely destroy you. And in turn, now you're doing good for the world essentially, and you're starting to spread out now. So again, it's like, nobody wants to go through these experiences, but if you hadn't gone through them, then you wouldn't be where you are today, and you wouldn't be helping out as many people as you are today. So props to you for having that level head, staying strong, and getting to a good point and being able to help others now.
Thanks. And I want to thank Andrea, because, at the end of the day, God sent me a couple angels through this. One was my buddy Ty. He got me through all of those things, I met all these wonderful healers, and he sent Andrea into my life to have me we started the children's books, because we know if we're going to change the world, we got to start with our children. And then, she pushed me to do the podcast, and she sees things in me and direction that God has for us that I don't see. And so thank you, Andrea, for making that happen for me.
Thank you. I don't even know what to say. I'm just glad to be here.
Hey, Shayn, we got to give her some slack. She was in the Navy. Not everybody can be in.
Well, I mean, I want to make sure we include her in the conversation stuff a bit too, because I didn't want her to feel like she was just sitting off in the corner and stuff. So I'm glad she at least got to bounce in for a few parts. But
yes.
And the work that Andrea is doing is amazing. Teaching you how to raise your vibration and everything's. Tell them about being a direct reflection, because that's what you do.
I was going to say, we got to give her a moment to at least spotlight some of her work too. So,
thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I believe that everyone is meant for abundance in all areas of their life. I believe you can have it all, and that all starts with having a high vibration. And I think if you want to have love in your life, you be the love, right? If you want to have joy in your life, you be the joy, and you will get that back 1,000 times. And really, whatever you want in life, you can have it. We create our own reality, and it all starts with your vibration and learning how to harness the power of your personal vibration. And I wrote a book called Vibrational Mastery. A high vibration is your superpower, because it really is your superpower. And yeah, I mean, that's it. Like we are meant for abundance, and we all go through traumatic things. I know someone had told me once, after commenting on one of my Instagram posts, that I speak like someone who has never experienced a bad day in my life. And that's just not true. We all have very bad days. We all have very bad experiences. It's just what you choose to do with that on the other side. So you can either, like you said, Shayn, you can triumph over it and choose to do good with it and, lift other people up, or you can become the victim. And I believe that when you become the victor and not the victim is when your real abundance will open up. So
it's one of those things where it's like the people with the biggest smiles, it's either two sides of the coin. It's either one, no matter what, they've been through some trauma, and either one is tearing them apart on the inside and they're hiding it with a smile, or two, they've been through some stuff and nothing can bring them down anymore, so they just go about life with a smile. So I'm glad that you're on that side of it.
Yes, thank you.
And Andrea and I are working on these programs where we believe you can heal in an instant.
Yes.
You don't have to go through years of misery. I'm not saying it's not going to hurt for a little bit, but when you look for the beauty and the pain, if you look for the lessons that are there, and look how life has happened for you, not to you, and get her book on vibration. And I wrote a book called The 15-Minute Transformation, where you can do for 15 minutes a day, you change your mindset, changes the world. And, we've got some other books coming out as well. And, you can change the way you think in a minute. You can change the way you feel in a minute. If you know how to do it. And if you're open to look at yourself and see what you brought to the table. Because we always bring something to the table.
People don't realize how much your mental has to do with like everything, because it's a lot of the time the people that are down, they don't want to be brought back up, because it's, again, a matter of trying to change your mindset, where it's like you may be going through some of the most awful stuff in the world, but on the other side of it, you can look back and say, at least I have my family, at least I have a roof over my head, at least I have this, or you look at the positive things. So it's like, that's the best way to go about it, in all fairness.
Yeah.
Yeah, start your day with gratitude, and you can't go wrong. I saw a thing once that said, if you're having a bad day, list 1,000 things you're grateful for. And you think 1,000 things, but really you can, right? Like, I'm thankful for my home, my daughter, my the food I have in the refrigerator. You literally can list 1,000 things you're grateful for, and by the time you're done, life is good.
I've always heard a really good one too that says, for every negative thought, replace it with 3 good thoughts. So for every time you think something bad of yourself, you replace it with 3 positive things about yourself. And eventually you get to a point where those negative thoughts about yourself will stop coming in as frequently.
Yeah. I think it's fair. A lot of people end up going through these relationships, and it's like, how do I end up with the same person, right? When you start looking at the lessons that are there, the red flags that we ignore, the choices that we consciously or subconsciously make, we create this pattern of turmoil. And so one of the things Andrea and I are committed to do is Not everybody wants to get better, Shayn. Not everybody wants to heal. Some people want to stay in that story, but if you want to, we're teaching simple techniques on how to shift that mindset, how to do something different, and it's interesting how easily it works.
Hold tight, guys. This is the last break, so stay tuned. And we are back, so let's hop right in. I know we've been talking about some great words of wisdom, and of course, I want to let everybody know where they can come and find your guys' books, find all your guys' work. But before we start closing up, I always like to do words of wisdom. So I'll let you guys go one after the other. But again, I know you guys have been talking words of wisdom for the past couple minutes, but if there's any specific words of wisdom that you could bestow on the listeners, be it somebody who's going through experiences or just somebody who wants to have a positive mindset, what might it be?
Andrea?
I guess words of wisdom is just be the watcher of your mind. If you don't control your mind will control you. And it can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So just make sure you're always watching those thoughts, because thoughts and words are very powerful. So make sure they're good thoughts, good words, and you'll attract the best stuff.
Yeah. And she says that to me all the time. Sometimes even when I don't want to hear it, I'm like,
but that's when you need to hear it.
It is when you need to hear it. Somebody told me a while back, I was molested as a kid, right? So, my story that Wes Coons had was I was molested as a kid or some version of that. And a friend of mine told me, she said, honey, that's not your story. That is an experience that you experienced as a child. It's a sentence or a chapter or a paragraph in the back of the book of Wes. And when she told me that I could rewrite my story, it started changing things. And it's not that story wasn't valid. It's not that somebody's story isn't valid. It's not that something that something horrible happened to somebody. I'm not saying that is not valid. However, that is not what you're here for. That is an experience that you came here to experience. So let's leave it as an experience and leave it in the back of your book and rewrite the rest of the book of how you're beautiful, you're gifted, you're loved. Every step you take raises your vibration. Every breath you take heals your body. Become the beacon of light that you're supposed to be. That's what you're here for.
Say, let it be a brick at the bottom of the tower rather than the steeple to the tower.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for all of the awesome stuff that you guys have been mentioning that you're working on today, be it helping people or the books or your podcasts, all of that stuff, where can people find your guys' individual pages? Where can they find your guys' podcasts? And where can they find all your guys' work on the internet?
You want me to go first, Wes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you can find me on Instagram at An Abundant Universe. I also have a website called howgooditcanget.com because life can get really good. And let me show you how good it can get. So howgooditcanget.com, An Abundant Universe on Instagram. The books that we have are through the Enlightened Children series for the children's books. What Color is Your Dragon and Sydney's New Bikes is available on Amazon. And my book, Vibrational Mastery, A High Vibration is Your Superpower, is also available on Amazon, along with my other books. You can find them there.
Yeah.
Oh, and my podcast, How Good It Can Get.
Yeah. Yeah. She's got a great podcast. She doesn't invite me on the podcast very much, but just saying.
So the very first episode.
So you can find me on Instagram at VB Healer, Virginia Beach Healer, and then enlightenment_unknown. That is on Instagram. You can find all our stuff in both of our links. You can find the books that we've done there. And, if you want to hear a story about a haunted house that turns into a love story, somebody finding themselves and loving themselves, or a story about a woman who changes her life, her world, her mind, and then you can come and connect with us. And, we partnered up to change the world, and we can't change the world by talking to ourselves. So we've talked to the world. And so thank you for having us on your show. You got a fantastic show. You've been very generous. And I want to hear some of the stories the Bigfoot guy was talking about where he said he couldn't talk about it. I'm like, I want to hear that. Tell me that story, because those things are real. No.
Dude, it's always those stories, though. They're the ones that get you. It's the ones that people don't want to talk about. And there's always a reason why they don't want to talk about it. It's because those ones, they bring so much mystery and validity to it that it sparks the mystery in the back of your mind, you know?
Yeah, well, we tell all on ours, including the dragons, including those things that you see up there at the Native American stuff. And dude, if you're ever in Virginia Beach and you want to do some Native American work, my friend Lakota comes here and she does sweat lodges and stuff. We can go to Abington, Virginia, do some work up there. It is an extraordinary spiritual experience. You can find me and I can connect the dots for anybody listening. But brother, you ever want to come, we'll show you a good time and take you on a journey you've never seen before.
Oh, yeah, man. We'll have to mark the day, try to make it so something happens, because I'm always looking for an excuse to get out of Michigan, come down and visit with friends in the community and stuff. So we'll definitely have to try to plan something out and make that happen.
We got one in November.
And I think I'm going to be in West Virginia. Actually, I'm going to be in West Virginia in October, so I'm going to be close, but maybe I'll have to double back in November.
Nice, man. It'll be good.
And I appreciate you guys making the time to come on today. I appreciate you guys being so open about your story and the experiences and everything. And I'm really looking forward to doing some more stuff in the future. I feel like there's a lot more conversation that we can still have pertaining to just this kind of stuff in general. And at some point soon, we'll have to set something up and get you to come on Bizarre Encounters, because I'm sure my co-hosts on that show would love to hear your experiences too.
Yeah, man, we'd love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If you guys enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave that 5-star review. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can email me at inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can get a hold of me through social media, Instagram or Facebook. Instagram is the one that I'm most active on, of course. Or you guys can get a hold of me through the submission forms, which are available on the Linktree. The first one is to contact me, and the other one is to report an encounter. So don't forget to report those encounters to OMMEncounterReports@outlook.com. And every single thing that I mentioned throughout the show is all on the Linktree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. I hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality, and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.